Guys, welcome back to another video, and in this video we're going to be continuing on with our SwiftUI tutorial series, and in this particular tutorial we are going to be taking a look at PhotosPicker in SwiftUI. Now this is a view that's part of the Photos UI framework, and what this allows us to do is it allows us to access assets from our photo library. Now, the thing about this PhotosPicker is that the PhotosPicker itself, like the user interface and all of that, that runs in a completely separate process from our own app. So we can still retrieve data because the PhotosPicker sends it over to our app, and the way that we can retrieve that data is by using what's called the transferable protocol. And we'll take a look at how we can retrieve data from our PhotosPicker using that protocol, but for now, just know that is how we would do that. Now, because the PhotosPicker runs in a separate process, privacy is much easier to maintain because you're not directly accessing your photo library or anything like that. Everything's being sent over to you from that other process. That also helps with not needing to authorize access to the photos library as the developer. So, again, a big privacy win. Of course, that means there's a little bit more work that we need to do, again, with transferable, but that's okay, at least in my opinion. It's worth it for the privacy win. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. Inside of Xcode, what I want you to do is I want you to import the Photos UI framework. So import Photos UI. Alright. Now that we've imported Photos UI, we have access to the PhotosPicker and everything else that we need to work with it. Now, the PhotosPicker has many different initializers, many different things you can do with it. But what we're going to be using today is we're going to be using a binding to an optional PhotosPicker item that will hold any potential asset that we've selected. It could be a movie, it could be a panoramic movie, it could be a slow-mo video, it could be a depth effect photo, any kind of photo or video asset that you can save to your phone, your Mac, whatever, you can choose in this PhotosPicker. And then we're also going to give it a label because, well, we need a label, right? So that's what we're going to do with this, but you can specify filters, which we're also going to do. You can specify how many assets you can select at maximum, all that kind of stuff. I urge you to explore some of the initializers because the PhotosPicker is very customizable. You can do a lot with it. So, inside of our content view struct, excuse me, we are going to have two state variables. One is going to be a optional PhotosPicker item, and then the second is platform specific. Or, well, it can be platform specific. This could also be cross-platform by using data. So there are three options for this for the second state variable. It could either be a UI image, an NS image, or a data object. Now, why those three options? Well, those are the three options that would allow you to extract the data, like the asset's actual data, to be able to to be able to send that over the network or store it in core data or Swift data or whatever. But if you don't want to do that, this could also be an optional image struct, right? An optional image view struct. So you could use that in your UI, but you can't get the data from an image view. So just keep that in mind. So Mac OS, you would use NSImage, UI image for everything else, and then data if you want to use both platforms. But at some point, you will have to use platform-specific code when rendering that image. All right. So what we'll do is first we'll say @state private var selected item. This will be a PhotosPicker item ? Now, one thing I should bring up at this point is if you want to support multiple selections, you want this to be a non-optional array of PhotosPicker items. My goodness, excuse me, I am not feeling very well today. But if you want a singular asset, this has to be optional. All right. Next, we'll have @state private var selected item data. We'll make this a data object. This will also be optional. All right. And with that, we can begin actually creating our user interface. So inside of the body here, we want this all to be in a VStack or a form or whatever. We'll put this inside of a form. And then in this form, I'm going to have a PhotosPicker. And you can see in the autocomplete all the different initializers that we can use. But the one that we want is the first parameter being a selection. We want this to be bound to the selected item, like that. Second, we want filters. So filter okay. Let's see here. We want. Okay, there we go. All right. So the second parameter is for our filters. And these can be any kind of asset here. So we can see we have bursts, we have cinematic videos, depth effect photos, images, live photos, all that kind of stuff. But there are a few that we can work with that are relatively special. The first being all. Now, all basically says I want to be able to select any kind of asset in my photos library. Anything. Photos, videos, it doesn't matter. Any is another one that allows you to select, right, an array of filters that you can use. So you can say, oh, I want to support depth effect photos, cinematic videos, panoramic photos, that kind of stuff. Only specific ones, right? If you want to have multiple assets, but you don't want to have all of them, any is your way to go, and where you pass in that array of filters that you want to apply. Now, there's also not, and not tells the PhotosPicker don't show me assets of this specific type. All right. So with that, we can have a more tailored experience with our PhotosPicker. I'm going to choose images here as just the singular asset. And then we need a label. So this will be done with a content closure. And inside of this closure, we'll have a label view of select a photo. This could also be just a normal text as well if you wanted it to be that. But I want to use an SF symbol here to get a little bit more context across by using the camera.fill SF symbol. There we go. Okay. Okay, so we are forgetting a parameter label, and that is matching, like that. There we go, matching. Matching is the parameter for our filter. So we have that now. And we are good on the PhotosPicker UI. But we need to be able to handle the selection of a new asset. As of right now, we can't do anything, right? We don't display anything or anything like that. Everything just gets stored away, and we can't do. We're not doing anything with it. I'm gonna spell photo correctly. There we go. And so what we can do is we can display an image. And there are many initializers. We could store a UI image in here, so we could pass it a UI image with our data or an NS image with our data. Either way, it has to be something platform specific. So if you want to use multiple platforms, you will have to use a compiler directive to accomplish that. So we'll say UI image. Okay. Xcode, if you could cooperate with me, we'll say image, UI image, data, selected, item data. All right. So this is what your image view would look like on iOS, watchOS, whatever. Every other platform except macOS. And I mentioned we would have to wrap this in a platform compiler directive. Well, this is what I mean. So in order to make this view only render on iOS, so we don't get yelled at by Xcode, we will say hashtag if OS iOS hashtag else and then hashtag endif. So in the else block of this, we will have image, ns image, and then we'll give it an ns image object with our selected item data, like that. Now, If we're on macOS, this second image view, will be rendered. If we're on iOS, the first one will be rendered. Now, the only other thing that we have an issue with here is the selected item data object is optional. So we need to unwrap this first. Let's go ahead and do that by saying if let selected selected item data equals selected item data. Like that. And then we can wrap all that in that if statement. Okay. Then the NS image also needs to be unwrapped. Okay. So what we'll do is in between the else and end if, we'll say if image equals NS image with some data. Selected item data. Then we'll say image NS image with an NS image, or rather with image passed in like that. Okay. If let image, there we go. Okay. And there we go. Now we have all of our code for rendering the user interface. However, there's one last thing we need to do, and that is we need to actually handle selecting an asset from the photos library and change our other state variables accordingly. And we can do that using the onChange modifier. So down at the bottom here, we will attach a .onChange of selected item. So whenever this changes from nil to something else or something else to nil, we want to do some additional work here. Now, the first thing that we're going to need is we're going to need to wrap this work in a task, because this is something that we can do asynchronously with async and await syntax. So we'll wrap this in a task. And with that, let's briefly talk about transferable, because I briefly touched on it in the beginning, but I want you to have a better idea of what this is. So transferable is a way for you to declaratively specify how your app can handle incoming or outgoing data transfers between different processes, mainly other apps. Now, transferable here is important because, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, PhotosPicker runs its UI in a completely separate process, and under the hood uses XPC or cross-process communication to communicate with our app, telling us what item was selected and giving us that data in a secure manner. This protocol not only enables the PhotosPicker to work as it does, but it also enables things like drag and drop, copy and paste, sharing, all that stuff is supported by transferable in SwiftUI, whereas we didn't use transferable in UIKit or AppKit because that wasn't a thing and still isn't a thing on those platforms. In those UI frameworks, we have to use something entirely different. All right, so how then do we get all the data that we need from our payload in transferable? Well, the first thing that we need to do is we need to load that transferable object. And we can do this inside of our task by surrounding this in a do catch print error localized description. This operation can throw as well as it being alongside it being asynchronous. So we have to wrap it in a do try here. We'll say let loaded image equals try awaits, and then we'll say selected item dot load transferable, and we want to load a specific transferable to the type of data.self. Now, if you were just using a optional image instead of data for whatever reason, like you didn't need to get the data or something like that from the image, the image.self would work here as well because the image view conforms to transferable. But we have data.self here because data conforms to transferable, and we want to be able to retrieve that data so we can store that in our selected item data state variable. But you need to also know that load transferable could return nil. So this is optional. We need to unwrap this before we do anything else with it. So we'll say if let image data equals, we'll say loaded image data equals loaded image. So now that we've unwrapped this, we can say self dot selected item data equals and then we'll say, well, we also need we should also do if let data equals loaded image data as data okay. So we don't need to do that, that's fine. We can say at this point self dot selected item data equals loaded image data. And there we go. And with that, we can save this and run our code. I'm gonna check the run destination here. Okay, yep, my Mac, that's the right destination that I want here. And we have a successful build. All right, so here we are in our application. You can see we have a form here. And then we have our select a photo button. We will select that photo. Here's our photos picker. All photos. And then I'll select the singular image that I have in my photos library. And here's our image, being prominently displayed in our user interface. Pretty neat, huh? So let's also run this on the iPhone so we can see what it looks like over there. Okay, I'm gonna run this on my phone now. Okay, we have a build failure, so let's see what we need to do here, just so we can see what we're doing. Okay, so we need to also unwrap our UI image, so that's fine. Let's go back up. If let image equals UI image with some data, selected item data. We will wrap this up. And do that. There we go. All right. And then we can pass in image. All right, save that. And we should be good to go. Let's go ahead and run it now, again, on the phone. Excuse me. And then I'm going to open up my phone here. Let's unlock. All right, so now I'm going to screen mirror. Screen mirroring. I'm going to screen mirror to my Mac Mini. All right. So here we are in our application. Okay, so things are still trying to load. Okay, here we go. So here's our button, select a photo. We'll tap that. It brings up the photos picker. And then we'll just do this screenshot here. It loads, and there it is. All right. So with that, that is how we can use the Photos Picker in SwiftUI. Thank you all so very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.